From purely a surface level, 2003's Delta Force Black Hawk Down really isn't that unique as a game. It's a fairly light tactical FPS, which besides its setting, didn't make much of a splash. By no means a bad or even below average installment in the Delta Force series, as soon as you actually look at the context of the game's release, does it become noteworthy. As the title would suggest, the game's based around the US Operation Restore Hope that occurred in Somalia during 1993. You play as a Task Force Ranger squad leader, later becoming a member of Delta Force. As your title would suggest, you're the best of the best, so you're going to undertake some dangerous and intense operations either as one force or with the support of fellow military personnel. The US's involvement in Somalia was pretty weird. While technically not a failure like Vietnam, it ended up looking like one after the Battle of Mogadishu, even though it was a success. While the game does paint a fairly positive view of the conflict, likely a result of America's invasion of Iraq that same year, it keeps the genuine historical flavour to the missions you undertake, though it's stretched pretty far. If you've played a lot of games like me, it's not long before certain scenes start reminding you a lot of 2007's Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. The game itself was very thematically similar to the movie, but sitting aboard a helicopter while picking off dudes from the ground with a rifle before breaching and clearing out a building will definitely give you some form of deja vu. The game actually advertised itself as giving players the first real taste of modern warfare in a video game. We often link Call of Duty 4 to jumpstarting the modern military shooter, but Delta Force did it years prior. High-tech weaponry with a rocking soundtrack, plenty of explosions, and not a Nazi inside was a very novel idea. A seemingly ahistorical setting with some current political undertones, but instead of criticising the United States like in COD, it more or less supports it. So no aftermath level here. Most of the game has you destabilising militia forces supporting both Pakistani and UN personnel while protecting the civilians from crossfire. This may involve clearing the area of hostiles, destroying some sensitive equipment, escorting VIPs out of hot zones, and defending relief convoys from being overrun. While not very original, it feels consistent to the setting. Besides fighting in urban sprawls, you'll find shantytowns and barren deserts either on foot or in a vehicle. Easily the best missions are the ones that combine both on-foot and vehicle action, resulting in some pretty neat scripted scenes. The climax of the campaign is the Battle of Mogadishu, a multi-level sprawl with plenty of action and, like the actual battle, plenty of black walks going down. One of the strongest selling points of the game was how large and expansive the environments were. For the time, and even now, they put to shame the comparably cramped shooters. You may be fighting in a garage before jumping on the back of a truck, heading miles in a different direction before reaching a swampland where you clear out a dockyard of enemies. But don't be deceived by its scale, it's a pretty linear game. You'd imagine the large levels would give way to optional paths and objectives. They don't. You have an extremely friendly objective marker on your compass that shows exactly where you need to go. It's so exact it almost feels insulting. Anyway, the environments, besides being big, don't contain much. You do have NPC civilians walking around towns who either welcome you as a liberator or an invader, which I think is a very interesting idea, but there's no different routes or collectibles or optional tasks for that matter. The missions play out the same way every time. The only changes you can make in successive playthroughs is what weapons you take into a mission, a shame since it can be quite a realistic and immersive game. For 2003, it's definitely not the sharpest looking game, but it has some detailed and varied animations and weapons. Character and vehicle models are pretty convincing on the move, and the assortment of weapons contains everything from sniper rifles, light machine guns, SMGs, and assault rifles. They sound pretty good with reasonable animations, especially when reloading the grenade shells. The amount of enemies on screen really captures the feeling of being perpetually surrounded in combat, and it all runs pretty consistently with little hiccups. While you don't actually ever drive a vehicle, when on board one it feels like an actual physical object instead of some scripting. Being aboard a helicopter really feels like you're airborne instead of just being glued to a seat. However, on closer inspection you'll notice its graphical shortcomings. The character models can look both horrifying and outright hilarious at the same time. Jesus. While the vehicles look reasonable, good god does the 50 cal induce vomiting, made worse with how frequent you use it. To put it bluntly, some parts feel very copy and pasted with the same ugly texture pasted across most levels. And the realism angle is at odds with itself, being very evident in combat. On every difficulty, regardless of weapon or body part you hit, enemies drop in about one bullet. There's no reason to use a slow firing rifle when you can deliver the same damage at a far faster rate with an M4. Enemies themselves are either wielding AK-47s or a rocket launcher, and besides having to figure out whether they're a civilian or a hostile, you can just mow them down without a second thought. Any sort of advanced tactics is unnecessary, more with how dumb they are. They'll rush your position in the dozens like it was World War I, occasionally firing a few bullets before hitting the ground. Then again, your teammates aren't much better, but at least they can follow you reasonably well. The most you can do is occasionally stack up against a wall and toss a flashbang into a room, which is interesting when comparing the game to Call of Duty 4 again. Now while they die fast, you don't. Sort of. You can take a fair bit of damage, and you restore health and ammo with the occasional supplies you find lying around. The hit detection is odd. Sometimes you can race up to some without taking any heat, then other times you get aced across a city block. What will really piss you off are the frequent cheap deaths by the sporadic turrets. These fuckers will rip you apart in mere seconds in the most cheap and bullshit ways possible. It comes across as a slap across the face after mowing through hundreds of militiamen to get wrecked by a single jackass. It's made worse with the limited quick saves per level. Oh yeah, unlike Hitman, we have a set amount depending on difficulty. Here you can have as many as 2 to several, and believe me, they're not enough for most missions. You could die so fast and fail an objective so easily, it gets pretty annoying having to replay the same stage over and over again. In general, Black Hawk Down's difficulty is all over the place. Some missions are a walk in the park, not even dying once, while others will have you pulling out your hair. Some of the harder missions are the earliest ones. I have pretty mixed feelings on the game. I enjoyed the modern historical setting, especially in contrast to the times, and the gameplay is fun for the most part, if a bit basic, and probably misleading thanks to its realistic veneer. I can't outright recommend Delta Force Black Hawk Down, as there are plenty of better, superior shooters that were released around the time and later. However, if you want a bit of cheap military action, you could do a lot worse.